Whatever. Sit where you sit. We'll get through this. Because I'm thinking about all this stuff in our congregation and the joys and the sorrows. You know, the stuff that just makes you feel heavy and lose interest. And the stuff that's exciting and energizing. It's all here. It's all here. And I know every one of us has stuff going on in our lives in great and terrible ways. Stuff that we could all put in the prayers today. Stuff that we are all here to pray for. Whether we're formally acknowledging people or privately talking to God this morning. We're all here to ask for some help. And we're all here to say thanks as well. So we take all of that. We take a deep breath. We say, God, speak to us this day. Whatever else happens today, may you hear God's words to you. God's words of challenge. God's words of growth. And God's words of comfort and joy. Please rise and join me on page 3 of your working folder. Sisters and brothers in Christ, beloved children of God, grace, mercy, and peace be with you all. Amen. Holy Gospel according to St. Mark, the 8th chapter. Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others one of the prophets." He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "Well, you're the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, but turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you're setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." And he called the crowd with his disciples, and he said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. God's grace, mercy, and peace be yours this day through Christ, our Savior and Lord. There was once a king who had 4 daughters, each of whom he knew and loved equally. In his aging years, he knew that one of them must take the throne as his replacement, but he didn't know which one to choose, so he devised a test. The king gave each daughter a single grain of rice. "Each of you must decide what to do with your rice. I'm going away, and when I return, I will choose who will be queen." The first daughter looked at the rice in her hand and said, "My father is a great king, and so this rice is most precious." She wrapped it in a golden thread, and placing it on an altar, prayed over it each day for her father's safe return. Second daughter thought, "This is special rice from her most special father." She hid hers in a plain box under the bed, so that robbers would not steal it. The third daughter said, "My father is a great king, and I can have rice anytime I want." She threw hers in the trash. The fourth held her rice for a year and a day and contemplated what to do with it. Time passed, 2 years and more. The daughters were looking out the window one day and saw a man traveling toward the palace. It was their venerable father. They took him in, washed his feet, dressed him in clean robes, and fed him before finally he asked, "Now, daughters, I'm most curious to know what you did with your rice." The first brought the gold-wrapped grain to him. "I treated it with great respect and prayed for your safe return." The king kissed his daughter's cheek. "I'm proud of you, my daughter." The second brought a dusty box from under her bed. "I kept it safe from robbers, father." "I am proud of you," he said, kissing his second daughter's cheek. Well, the third daughter had a problem now, didn't she? She had thrown hers away, but let's face it, one grain of rice looks like any other. She went to the kitchen and got another grain. "Look, Father, here's mine." The king did not become king for lack of wisdom, and he knew his daughters well. "I expected as much," he said with a knowing smile. "She was a clever one, to be sure, and I'm proud of her." His fourth daughter stood silent by the window as each of her sisters presented their grain. "And my fourth one, where is your rice?" "My father," she said sadly, "I no longer have my rice." The old king walked to her side and looked out the window. "I planted it, Father, for the people were hungry." Before the old king's eyes were fields of rice from a single grain he had given his daughter. "I am most proud of you," he said, placing a crown upon her head. "For a good queen knows that she must care for others." Now, it's not so much that this fourth became queen that makes the story important when we think about choices. Each daughter did what she felt was right and was presented with the same opportunity. And each was successful in their own measure. No choice made by the princesses was necessarily wrong because success has many definitions. But only one daughter succeeded in the proposed goal of becoming queen. May you do with your grain of rice that which will bring you your intended success. I like this story because it raises the question of success, and it's one that we periodically talk about in the church that's hard to really measure. We had a council meeting this last week, and the council's job is to figure out, are we doing the right things? Are we using our resources in the right way? Are we doing what God would want us to do? Are we succeeding? And it's a tough question to answer. One way to measure is to look, are people coming to church? How are our numbers? Are people continuing to attend? Because that's a way of trying to figure out who's connected. Are people connected with what we're doing here? Are they participating in the work of God? Are they hearing the good news? But I had a colleague once suggest, hey, if you just want people in the pews, you can hand out $5 bills at the door. You'd have a full church. So just measuring numbers doesn't necessarily tell us if we're succeeding in sharing the good news. But how do you measure? Some Christians like to figure out how many people they've shared the faith with, how many people they've converted to the faith and brought into the message of hope. Now that's a lot to keep track of. I think our lesson today suggests that there's a singular, simple definition for success. But we'll get there. Before we get there, I think we need to talk a little bit about the lesson to appreciate what Jesus is saying. It says that Jesus and the disciples are in the region of Caesarea Philippi. So Caesarea Philippi is not a Jewish name. That is very much a Roman name, named after Caesar. Caesar was thought to be a god made flesh. The Romans believed in lots of different gods, had little idols. They would pray to them, make sacrifices to them, worship them in a sense. And Caesar was somebody who was seen to have godlike properties, godlike qualities. And so to be in Caesarea Philippi, you're clearly outside of Jewish territory. Not only that, Caesarea Philippi was known in the ancient world to have a distinctive trait about it. In the center of the town, there was a huge statue erected to the god Pan. Now, Pan is a Greek god. If you watched, Into the Forest, I think, there's Pan is one of the big characters in there. These polytheistic religions often have yes, Isaac. It's okay. It happens. These polytheistic religions often have one of the gods who's kind of a mischief maker. The God, our God we understand to be good, always good. We talked about that recently. But in these pantheistic religions, there's often one who's kind of a mischief maker. So in Norse mythology, it's Loki who's kind of making trouble. We don't think of God as making trouble and being mischievous because our God doesn't do that. But when you've got lots of different gods, there's one who likes to be a troublemaker. And so Pan was the troublemaker. They had this big statue erected to him because you got to honor him or he's going to make trouble in your life. That was the thinking. So here Jesus is with the disciples. These faithful Jewish people who are starting this new thing, who are reshaping Judaism a little bit, but doing their darndest to be faithful to how they understand God. And they're in this territory that is so very much not what they believe. They're in the opposite kind of territory, hearing all kinds of gods and people who may have some different standards, some different morals, and I think it's fascinating that this is where Jesus chooses to ask the disciples saying about me? And then he turns to them and says, how about you? What do you say about me? In thinking about why would Jesus ask them here in this place, I think it makes sense because it's easy to proclaim our faith in a place like this, where we're surrounded with people who have similar beliefs. We may differ on some political views. I know that. It's okay. Some social differences, but we agree on on the majority of our theology. We can make statements of faith and not be ridiculed. But what about when you're surrounded by people who don't hold the same views and the same beliefs? How do you hold on to your faith? Maybe it's the workplace. Maybe it's your own home where people don't necessarily share your views. And Jesus is saying, what about you? What do you say about me? Can you continue to hold on to your trust in my love for you, even when the people around you don't see things the same way? One of the things I like to do with the confirmation kids is go into Portland and go to the Saturday market. I've done this a couple times now. And if you've been to Saturday market, you know that it's chaos. You know, there are people coming and going all over the place. And it's a real mix of people, some real artistic folks and some musical folks and some real individuals. People are really striving to find their individuality. I've been down there by the fountain with the bagpiping unicycler. And the Hare Krishnas in their robes and shaved heads and their tambourines handing out tracts. And what I've asked the confirmation kids to do is that we'll join hands and recite the Lord's Prayer together, out loud, at Saturday market. And then we'll talk about it afterwards. How was that to stand in this kind of place with all these individuals, all these creative people, all these folks who are not necessarily sharing the faith? How is it to hold on to your own faith in this environment? In a public way. To own your faith by reciting a well-known prayer. Well, teenagers, about the depth we get is weird. It's weird. Well, it is weird. But it's uncomfortable. Not knowing what people around you might be saying about you, might be thinking about you. And Jesus, in this kind of environment, okay, whether you're standing beneath the statue of Pan or standing at the fountain at Saturday market, what are they going to say? But more importantly, are you able to hold on to your faith here? Peter does. Peter's bold. He says, yeah, you're the Messiah. You're the one we waited for. And Jesus says, that's right. But you need to understand what the Messiah is all about. The Messiah is here for a very specific purpose. He is to suffer, be rejected, be killed, and rise again. Peter says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Wait a minute, that's not a Messiah. We've been talking about the Messiah coming for hundreds of years and expecting this Messiah to be the ruler, to lead us as, like a king into our promised land here, to take back our land. And, no. Wait a minute. Jesus, you're telling God made flesh how to be God? Really? To understand this, I think, one scholar has suggested we need to remember the story that came just before this, where Jesus heals a blind man. The story goes that this blind guy is brought to Jesus, and Jesus licks his thumbs, prays over him, touches his eyes, puts his thumbs on his eyes, and says, okay, can you see now? And the guy says, well, sorta. I see shapes moving that kind of look like trees. And Jesus goes, okay, hold up. Let me try again. Wow, I can see finally. Everything is clear. That story's never made sense to me. Because Jesus, who is perfect, the only one who is, didn't quite complete the miracle the first time? Did he mess it up? I've never understood that story. But one scholar has suggested that story leads into where we are today and kind of gives us the sense that how to understand Peter here. That Peter says, yes, you're the Messiah. That much I get. But then he isn't able to see the whole picture. He sees partly. He sees that Jesus is the Messiah, the one who God has sent, but he doesn't quite understand what Jesus is saying he's going to do. That a Messiah is sent to suffer, be persecuted and arrested, die, and rise again. That just doesn't make sense to him. That doesn't click. So he sees partially and needs his eyes fully open here. I think the good news here for us is that Peter doesn't have to have the perfect answer. Even though Peter chastises Jesus a little bit, He says, no, that's not what a Messiah does. Even though he stands up that way and pretends to tell God what to do, he's not kicked out of the disciples. Out of here, Peter. What kind of answer is that? Who do you think you are to talk back to me? That's not what Jesus says. Jesus says, you're setting your mind on human things, not on divine things. You see partially, but those things that you don't quite understand, that you can't quite see, trust me with those. Let me take care of the big stuff. And Peter doesn't have to have a perfect answer. And this is where we come in, and defining success. Jesus says that the definition of success, that if you want to be a Christian, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow. I think we can even simplify that further, simply to the cross. It comes back to the cross. And in the big picture of the gospel, our success is defined not by anything that we end up doing, but what Jesus has done on the cross. The cross is the symbol of our hope, the symbol of our success. That's why we wear them around our necks and hang them from our rearview mirrors and put them on the wall, so we remember that we are people who have succeeded, people who are victorious and triumphant, not by what we do, not by our perfect answers, but by the fact that Jesus went there. He died on the cross so that we don't have to. And he says, if you really understand that, if you really understand that you are a person of success based on what I'm doing for you, then you'll recognize how important it is to help people carry their crosses. There are plenty of crosses in the world. We're not called to die on them. That's what Jesus did. But we are called to help one another bear them. Our mark of success, our mark of victory, is the cross. When we see those burdens, those challenges that people are living with, that's where we can say, God has done so much for me. How can I help do the work of God and bring some healing and hope into the lives of those around me? How can I help them carry their cross? This is the word God has given us today. A word of victory. Even amidst the challenges, even amidst the hardships and the pains, that God is with us. That God has opened the door to eternity. And for this, even in our disappointment, we can say, God, you know more than I, and you will see me through.